The autograph request came backstage after a performance in 1965, a common occurrence for Louis Armstrong, who had been signing photographs and album covers for fans for decades. But when Louis handed back the signed photo to the young fan, the inscription read something unexpected. Not just to Bobby, best wishes, Louis Armstrong, but to Bobby, leave it all behind ya, Swiss Kriss Satchmo. The fan, confused, looked at the signature, leave it all behind ya. Swiss Kriss, what did that mean? Louis, seeing the confusion, pulled a small box from his dressing room bag. A laxative, herbal laxative called Swiss Kriss. Best thing in the world, Louis said with complete seriousness. Keeps you regular, keeps your system clean. You want some? I got extra. The fan, now deeply uncomfortable, declined and left. Quickly, this scene repeated itself hundreds, maybe thousands of times over 40 years. Louis Armstrong, one of the greatest musicians in American history, using his celebrity platform not to sell records or promote concerts, but to evangelize for a laxative, unpaid, unsponsored, completely earnest. From the 1950s until his death in 1971, Louis was obsessed with Swiss Kriss, convinced that regular bowel movements were essential to health, creativity, and life itself. He took it daily, recommended it to everyone, signed autographs promoting it, included it in fan mail, talked about it in interviews, made it part of his identity as much as his trumpet or his gravelly voice. The laxative he promoted for 40 years, not because he was paid to, but because he genuinely, deeply, bizarrely believed in it, and what that obsession reveals about Louis Armstrong, about his need for control, his health anxiety, his earnest weirdness, is more humanizing than any carefully managed public image could ever be. Louis Armstrong discovered Swiss Kriss sometime in the early 1950s, though the exact origin story varies depending on which interview or letter you read. In some versions, a doctor recommended it. In others, a friend suggested it. In yet others, Louis found it himself while dealing with digestive issues from constant touring, irregular eating schedules, and the stress of performing nearly every night of his life. Whatever the origin, by the mid-1950s, Swiss Kriss had become central to Louis's daily routine, not just something he took occasionally, a ritual, a necessity, a religion. The product itself was unremarkable. Swiss Kriss was an herbal laxative created in the 1940s by a Swiss naturopath named Kunzel, marketed as a natural alternative to chemical laxatives. It contained senna leaves and other plant-based ingredients meant to stimulate bowel movements. Thousands of people used it without developing Louis's level of devotion. But for Louis, Swiss Kriss became something more than a digestive aid. It became a philosophy, a way of understanding health and the body, a control mechanism in a life that often felt out of his control. Louis's belief in Swiss Kriss was rooted in a simple idea. A clean system produces a clear mind, and a clear mind produces good music. He talked about this constantly. In letters to friends, he'd write, "Keep your bowels open. That's the secret. Swiss Kriss keeps you clean inside, and when you're clean inside, everything else works better." In backstage conversations with musicians, he'd expound on his theory. You can't blow good if you're all backed up. Your system needs to be clean. That's why I take Swiss Kriss every day, never miss. The daily ritual was elaborate and consistent. Every morning without fail, Louis would take Swiss Kriss. He kept boxes of it in his luggage when touring, in his dressing rooms, in his home. He was never without it. Lucille, his wife, learned to pack it alongside his trumpet and his clothes. The ritual had an almost spiritual quality. Louis believed the laxative was maintaining his health, prolonging his career, keeping him vital despite the grueling schedule of constant performance. But Louis didn't just take Swiss Kriss, he evangelized for it, with a zeal that would make modern wellness influencers look restrained. If you spent any time around Louis Armstrong in the 1950s-70s, you would hear about Swiss Kriss. Musicians in his band got regular lectures. You look tired, you taking care of your system. Here, try this. Louis would hand out boxes of Swiss Kriss like they were business cards. Backstage green rooms accumulated Swiss Kriss supplies that Louis had distributed to anyone who'd listen. The promotion extended to his fan interactions. When Louis signed autographs, which he did generously and frequently, he often included Swiss Kriss in the inscription. The phrase, "leave it all behind you," became his signature laxative slogan, a play on words that Louis found endlessly amusing. Fans would request autographs expecting standard well wishes and would receive instead an endorsement of herbal bowel movements. Some fans found it charming, others found it bizarre. Louis didn't care. He believed in Swiss Kriss, and he wanted to share that belief with the world. Louis also included Swiss Kriss promotional materials in his fan mail. People would write requesting autographs, and Louis would send back signed photos along with Swiss Kriss pamphlets, sometimes even sample boxes if he had extras. His letters to friends and family routinely included Swiss Kriss advice. Hope you're keeping regular. Don't forget your Swiss Kriss. It became such a consistent part of his correspondence that people who knew Louis would joke about it. But Louis was completely serious. The earnestness is what makes the obsession so fascinating. This wasn't a paid endorsement. Swiss Kriss never sponsored Louis, never gave him money or free product beyond what he purchased himself. Louis was promoting Swiss Kriss purely because he believed in it, in an era before influencer marketing, before celebrity endorsements were ubiquitous. Louis Armstrong was doing unpaid, unsolicited product promotion for a laxative because he genuinely thought everyone needed to know about it. Lucille's reaction to the Swiss Kriss obsession was tolerant amusement mixed with exasperation. She understood Louis had his quirks, and the laxative fixation was relatively harmless compared to other potential vices. She'd watch him pack multiple boxes for tour and just sigh. She'd hear him giving Swiss Kriss lectures to house guests and roll her eyes. But she also understood that Louis's health anxiety was real, that his need to feel in control of something, his digestion, if not his schedule or career, was psychologically important. So she tolerated the Swiss Kriss evangelism as part of being married to Louis Armstrong. Other musicians and friends were less tolerant. There are stories of band members getting tired of Louis's constant Swiss Kriss promotions. "Pops, I don't need laxative advice. Louis, please, we're trying to eat." But Louis persisted. If someone looked sick or tired or complained about feeling unwell, Louis had one diagnosis and one cure: backed up system, needs Swiss Kriss. He kept boxes in his dressing room specifically to give away. Would interrupt conversations to hand someone a sample. The obsession was comprehensive and inescapable. What makes Louis's Swiss Kriss devotion particularly interesting in 2026 is how much it resembles modern wellness culture and influencer marketing, except without the financial incentive. Today, celebrities promote products constantly: skincare routines, supplements, fitness programs, dietary approaches, usually because they're being paid. Sometimes substantial amounts. Louis was doing the same thing 70 years earlier, except he was paying for the product himself and giving it away for free. He was a proto-wellness influencer, convinced that he'd discovered the secret to health and determined to share it whether people wanted to hear it or not. The health anxiety underlying Louis's laxative obsession was genuine and understandable. Louis performed constantly, traveled relentlessly, maintained a schedule that would exhaust someone half his age. He had legitimate health concerns: heart problems, kidney issues, the physical toll of decades of trumpet playing. In that context, believing that something as simple as Swiss Kriss could maintain his health was appealing. It gave him control. He couldn't control his touring schedule, couldn't control the demands of fame, couldn't control aging, but he could control his bowel movements. And if keeping regular meant staying healthy enough to keep performing, then Swiss Kriss became essential. There's also something touchingly earnest about Louis's belief. In an era of carefully managed celebrity images, of brands and marketing and calculated public personas, Louis's genuine enthusiasm for a laxative feels almost innocent. He wasn't trying to sell anything, wasn't building a wellness empire, wasn't monetizing his influence. He just really, truly believed that Swiss Kriss was important and wanted to share that belief. The purity of that motivation, however misguided or excessive the execution, is rare. The "leave it all behind you" slogan that Louis attached to Swiss Kriss was characteristically Louis, clever wordplay with a wink. He understood the absurdity while simultaneously being completely serious about the message. The phrase appears on hundreds, maybe thousands of autographed photos. It became synonymous with Louis in some circles. Collectors of Louis Armstrong memorabilia specifically seek out Swiss Kriss autographs because they're so distinctively him. Bizarre and charming in equal measure, Louis's Swiss Kriss evangelism continued right up until his death. Even as his health declined in 1970-71, even as he was hospitalized multiple times, Louis maintained his laxative routine. Nurses would find Swiss Kriss boxes in his hospital room. He'd try to get doctors to endorse it. "This is what's keeping me going," he'd insist, even as medical professionals politely disagreed. The belief was unshakable. Swiss Kriss had become part of his identity, part of his health philosophy, part of how he understood his body and its maintenance. When Louis died in July 1971, among his possessions were dozens of boxes of Swiss Kriss. In his den, in his luggage, in his dressing room at home, a lifetime supply of laxative for a life that had ended. Lucille, sorting through Louis's things, found Swiss Kriss everywhere. It had been such a constant presence that its absence, no more Louis handing out boxes, no more autographs with laxative slogans, no more earnest lectures about keeping regular, marked his passing in its own small, strange way. The story of Louis Armstrong's Swiss Kriss obsession has become a footnote in his biography. Most serious examinations of his musical legacy don't mention it. But it's precisely the kind of humanizing detail that makes Louis more relatable, more real, more complex than the carefully curated icon, because the laxative evangelism reveals things about Louis that his music alone doesn't: his health anxiety, his need for control, his earnest weirdness, his willingness to be himself even when that self was promoting digestive regularity to confused fans. In 2026, we live in the golden age of wellness culture. Celebrities and influencers promote everything from jade eggs to alkaline water to vitamin IV drips. The language is different: optimization, biohacking, gut health, but the impulse is the same as Louis'. The belief that the right product, the right routine, the right approach to the body can unlock health and vitality and success. Louis was ahead of his time. Or maybe wellness obsession is timeless, and Louis was just expressing in 1960 what Gwyneth Paltrow expresses in 2026. The conviction that you found the secret and everyone else needs to know about it. The difference is Louis wasn't building a business, wasn't creating a brand, wasn't monetizing his influence. He just really loved Swiss Kriss and wanted to share that love freely. In an age of transactional celebrity endorsements, that purity of motivation stands out. Louis promoted Swiss Kriss the way he promoted jazz, because he believed in it, because it brought him joy, because he wanted other people to experience what he experienced. That the product was a laxative rather than an art form doesn't change the earnestness of the evangelism. There's also something beautifully democratic about Louis' approach. He didn't just promote Swiss Kriss to fellow celebrities or wealthy patrons. He promoted it to everyone: fans, musicians, strangers, friends, family. The teenage autograph seeker got the same Swiss Kriss recommendation as Duke Ellington. Louis believed everyone needed regular bowel movements, regardless of status or fame. Health through laxatives was a universal message. The modern resonance extends beyond wellness culture to questions about celebrity influence and authenticity. When we see celebrities promoting products now, we're always asking, do they actually use this? Are they being paid? Is this genuine or transactional? With Louis and Swiss Kriss, there's no question. He used it religiously. He wasn't being paid. It was completely, sometimes excessively genuine. That authenticity, even in service of promoting a laxative, feels refreshing in an age of calculated influencer marketing. But the obsession also reveals something less positive: how health anxiety can become fixation, how the need for control can manifest in rituals that substitute simple solutions for complex problems. Louis believed Swiss Kriss kept him healthy, but it didn't prevent his heart disease, didn't stop his kidneys from failing, didn't extend his life beyond 70. The laxative was a comfort, a ritual, a way of feeling in control, but it wasn't actually the solution Louis believed it to be. That gap between belief and reality, between what we think will save us and what actually affects our health, is poignant. Looking at Louis' Swiss Kriss boxes now, preserved in his house museum, there's something tender about them. Evidence of a man trying to take care of himself the best way he knew how. Evidence of someone who found comfort in routine and wanted to share that comfort with others. Evidence of the gap between public icon and private person, because the public icon wouldn't promote laxatives, but the private person absolutely would, because he genuinely believed it mattered. The laxative he promoted for 40 years, Swiss Kriss, not the most dignified aspect of Louis Armstrong's legacy, not the part that gets discussed in jazz history textbooks, but maybe the most humanizing. Because it shows Louis as he actually was: brilliant musician, yes, but also a person with odd fixations and health anxieties, and an earnest desire to share what he believed with everyone around him, whether they wanted to hear about bowel movements or not. The Swiss Kriss obsession doesn't diminish Louis, it completes him, makes him fully human rather than just an icon. Shows that even genius comes with quirks, that even the greatest artists have their weird obsessions, that Louis Armstrong was as complex and contradictory and wonderfully strange as anyone. Leave it all behind ya, Louis's laxative slogan. Meant literally about bowel movements, but also accidentally profound, about leaving behind pretense, about being yourself even when that self promotes digestive regularity on autographs, about the freedom that comes from not caring what people think, from believing what you believe and sharing it freely. Louis left it all behind, the need to appear dignified, the pressure to maintain a certain image, the expectation that great artists don't talk about laxatives. He promoted Swiss Kriss because he wanted to, because he believed in it, because that was who he was. 40 years of laxative evangelism. Bizarre, yes, but also authentically, completely, wonderfully Louis Armstrong.